Greetings, my name is Tony Silva, and I recently answered a lot of questions on macaws, how to care for them, their diet, and also some interesting aspects such as mutations and hybrids. There's something I want to reiterate, and that is a proper diet. They need fat in their diet. They also need beta-carotene rich vegetables like carrots and pumpkin and American sweet potato. If they don't get enough vitamin A, they will easily come down with fungus. And the other point is hygiene. If you are not prepared to sleep on the floor of that cage, then your hygiene is not good enough. Every day I get messages from there asking me, how do I treat this sick bird? How do I resolve this problem with infertility? Invariably, when I ask for a video or a photo of the cage, it's very dirty. You need to understand that hygiene impacts fertility because the birds can have subclinical signs that are bacterial in origin and that affect fertility and also overall health. Once a macaw starts to get sick, it's very difficult to turn it around and save it. I stress that because it is the key to success in macaw keeping. Thank you. Diet for macaws should contain a lot of beta-carotene rich vegetables, pumpkin and American sweet potato and carrots. You can also add broccoli, green leaf matter. Avoid fruits. Give them a lot of beta-carotene rich vegetables because they need that vitamin A in their diet. It's important to provide fat and to vary the fat. So for example, one week you may feed walnuts, and then the following week you would feed almonds, and then maybe you would skip a week and give them whole grain bread smothered in peanut butter or a mixture of nut oils. Vary the diet. You don't want to feed them the same thing because it becomes monotonous. You can't feed a pair of birds lentils and rice every day, nothing else, and expect them to be healthy. A human wouldn't like that diet. It wouldn't be a healthy diet. So you want to vary it all the time. And you want to give vegetables warm so that they're most enticing. You can give them whole grain pasta that's been cooked. And it's not white pasta. It's not bleached flour pasta, but whole grain pasta. And you can now buy pasta that contains vegetables in it. Those sorts of things are good. Try to vary the diet slightly so that it's always interesting. And change it. One day give vegetables later in the afternoon. The next day give them very early. Take out unwanted food at night so that the birds are hungry in the morning. Give them little treats during the day. Keep the bird interested in food so that it's receiving its proper nutrition. And make sure that if you feed an all-seed diet, if you're not feeding pellets, that you do supplement it with calcium and with minerals. Moringa powder is excellent. It's rich in iron, but it's a vegetable-based iron, so it's a plant-based iron, so it's not harmful to them. Animal-based, blood-based iron is not good for them. It's been implicated in some cases of hemochromatosis or iron storage disease in the liver. I often hear that my birds won't eat vegetables, my birds won't eat pellets. And when you ask people, oh, I've tried a week and it hasn't worked. No, you have to be persistent. I always recommend when you're trying to get the bird to eat a healthy diet that it doesn't want, to take out the food at night and to present those food items that you want it to eat in the morning. Vegetables can be offered warm to hot to make them enticing. You can add pellets that are colored to their food bowl. They're more attractive to bright colors than they are to a yellow colored pellet. So be creative. Offer them different things for them to eat and offer it in an interesting manner. Maybe take a coconut, split it in two, and put some vegetables inside to get the bird attracted to it. Be creative and you will be very successful. All incoming birds should be quarantined. They should be quarantined in an area where they're not in contact with your flock and where you do not have to walk through there to access your regular birds. The best quarantine is isolated, it's away from your birds, and it's a place that you can take care of birds last and shower out. So you would go in, feed them, clean them, etc., and then you would shower to get out and access your regular birds. While in quarantine, you should take cultures. Just medicating birds is not good because you don't know what you're facing. We have found that, for example, in your part of the world, Baytril, enrofloxacin, has been so abused that there's now a resistance to it. The diseases just aren't affected by it. So you need to ideally do a culture. And I often hear, well, there's no bird vet here. It doesn't have to be a bird vet to do a culture. Any veterinarian can do a culture because it's not a species-specific culture. All you're doing is you are checking for the presence of bacteria and pathogens. So any veterinarian can do a culture and sensitivities. And the sensitivities is what will dictate what antibiotics you should use. When you get wild birds, you should ideally keep them 1 per cage so you can monitor food intake, so that you can monitor their progress. Keeping them in a flock isn't going to teach you anything because you don't know if one bird is not eating, if one bird is being harassed by the others. It's going to give you very little information. Keep them 1 per cage, monitor their droppings, monitor their food intake. Make sure you hydrate them when they first arrive. Those birds have been in transit for quite some time and they've not had anything to drink, and what they've had to drink has been fruit that by then has become moldy. So you want to go ahead and give them an electrolyte-rich drink to rehydrate them, and then give them a chance to feed and rest. Macaws will, with time, get used to their keeper. They will get tame. It's nothing that you can do to precipitate that. Just the bird coming in contact with you, 1 per cage, will help that bird settle down. In a flock, there is flock fright, meaning that if one bird screams and runs, everybody else will do the same thing. So ideally, quarantine them 1 per cage, monitor their bacteria, the presence of bacteria in their fecal matter. If you can, do a swab from the choana, which is the slit at the roof of the mouth, and check them for parasites. Many wild macaws come loaded with parasites. Do a fecal flotation and then decide on which anthelmintic, which parasite medication you will use. Macaws are susceptible to many diseases, but the one that is the greatest concern is PDD aborna. We don't know enough about those diseases. They are highly contagious. They often come in with wild macaws. They're not easy to detect because the tests available are not really reliable. And once those 2 diseases get into an aviary, it's very difficult to eradicate and highly contagious. People say, why are you always stressing and harping on hygiene? Because if you don't have good hygiene, you will have disease. I've never understand why people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on expensive birds and then keep them filthy. There's just no connection there. A little bit of extra work can make that investment safeguarded. I often visit collections and they can't understand why the birds aren't breeding. And yet you look around and there's dust and dirt and filth. And when you take a culture of the bird, you find that they're full of E. coli or Klebsiella that are going to keep them from reaching a state of health that allows them to breed.
Approaching a railroad
If you
crossing.
want to breed birds, you've got to understand that hygiene is imperative. You don't want to sleep, or at least most people do not want to sleep in a dirty bed. They want to sleep in a clean bed. The cages are their beds. They sleep, they live, they breathe, they do everything in that enclosure. Keep it clean and you will save yourself a lot. I am asked to share prices, of mutation macaws. That's really not helpful because prices vary depending on where you are at in the world. All I can tell you is that all mutation macaws are very expensive. The most common one is the Lutino blue and gold, and then you get into the opaline. The a general guideline is that you can buy a very, very fancy car for the price of one Lutino, and you can buy a very high luxury item vehicle for the price of an opaline. Those are the two most common mutations. There are others, there's silver scarlets, etc. But those birds are very expensive. They're also being produced in very limited numbers, which means that you are competing with collectors that are prepared to pay whatever the price is for those birds. Hybrid macaws are extremely popular because some are really, really beautiful. They're also in high demand, and a lot of breeders like them. I have mixed feelings. I am not opposed to hybridization as long as not an endangered species is not involved. I don't like to see hybrids between hyacinths, for example, and blue and gold macaws, or along those lines. I also don't like to see hybrids with bouffants. Bouffants are in serious trouble in the wild. The captive population is too small. We should concentrate on breeding purebred specimens. Hybrids are very attractive, but when you breed a hybrid, you should always try to breed a hybrid to a purebred species, because when you breed hybrid to hybrid, particularly if they're the same hybrid, infertility becomes a problem, chick mortality becomes a problem, and not only short term, not only during egg development or shortly after hatching, but even many months later. So if you breed hybrids, try to always pair a hybrid to a purebred specimen. Macaw eggs are fairly easy to incubate if you do not overdo the humidity. The tendency is for people to have a hyper humid incubator, and then if that's not enough, to add additional water at hatching. If you look at the pairs in the same collection, they're able to hatch their eggs without any problem and without added humidity. So you should not boost humidity in an incubator. In fact, I generally recommend a humidity of about 48%. The temperature should be 37.4, and there should be a turn every 90 minutes, back and forth, and then 2 manual turns a day. One of those manual turns would allow the temperature to drop so that the eggs can cool. It's very important to allow cooling and to rotate eggs, not only mechanically, but also manually, so that they don't rest the same spot at the end of the day. They need to vary all around. And then in addition to that, you should move the eggs within the incubator. If you've ever played dominoes, you move the pieces all around and you shuffle them. You need to do the same thing with the egg. An egg from the perimeter will have a cooler temperature than one that sits in the middle of the incubator. So if you move them around, you will boost your success successfully. Wild or captive bred macaws breed just as readily. The key factor, again, is proper diet, healthy birds, and you can only achieve health if you can keep them clean, and finding a pair that's compatible. And compatibility means 2 birds that don't fight, that feed together, that spend time preening. It's also important to make sure that they are a pair, because male macaws will form homosexual pair bonds very, very readily.